Chamber's doing. Today, Tom Spika will introduce himself a little more deeply, but I really want to thank Tom. I met him back in January at a meeting up in Helena, and his passion for sharing his experiences with students in order to, perhaps to give them something exciting to look forward to, or, perhaps to say, well, that's not something I want to do. But in either case, we're really honored to have Tom Spika with us today, and you're going to learn a little bit more and see why that is such a treat for us. So I'm going to darken myself here and enjoy the show with everyone else. So Matt, Tom, it's all for you guys. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Mr. Spika, again, thank you very much for joining us. Tom is the founder of Spika Design and Manufacturing in Lewistown. He's going to be telling us some stories today from his journey on the farm to discovering the entrepreneurial spirit and to building a sustainable business that improves the lives of technicians and companies all around the world. We're really looking forward to this. Thank you again, and I will turn it over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Matt, and Jim, thank you. I am really honored to have the opportunity to speak today about something I'm definitely passionate about. When I first heard about YE, I was just extremely excited because it looks to me to be a very good way of helping this next generation see opportunities and encourage them to pursue what is definitely going to be a challenging but very rewarding career if they get into it. So today I'm in a way, I'm going to give you a history of Spika Manufacturing, but really this is a history of Tom Spika. This is where I come from, how I got here, where we are now, where I am now. And again, it's to me, it's a neat story. It's been a great life, and it's had so many twists and turns to it, but I'm just really happy with where I've come to today and the company that I started, where it's come to. So, thanks again for allowing me the opportunity to talk about this. And I really do encourage questions at the end. I'm going to try and make this first part fairly brief. And then I want it to be more of a conversation to the end, to where all of the students and the folks out there, even the instructors and those that are involved and interested in our youth and in entrepreneurship, fire questions away, and because they're good ways of leading into good discussions that I didn't think about putting on here. So anyhow, opening slide here, beginning of the next generation. That's what we're looking at. If you want to advance to the next one, Matt. This picture, lower left, that's our company mascot, Otis. He's my office pig. He's been living out on the farm here with me during the coronavirus, but he wanders around the office quite a bit, and it kind of is an example of the type of operation we have. We're rather non-conventional, and it's been the way that I started the company, and the management is kind of continuing that. We're a pet-friendly place, and we're just a little bit off of mainstream, and we like it that way. We pride ourselves on charting our own path and dancing to the beat of our own drummer, so to speak. So we're kind of a unique operation. I grew up on a farm, and I think that actually has a lot to do with the development of my personality and my basically entrepreneurship as well. Because when you're on a farm, for one thing, from an early age, you're working with your parents, you're working with the animals and the crops and the equipment, and you learn to be fairly skilled at problem solving. You can't rely on somebody else to fix the issues that you get into, because it's up to you. And so you learn that responsibility, and you develop skills fairly early on in in doing the things that you're doing. So growing up there, I just envisioned myself as a farmer rancher. I liked it. I enjoyed doing it. I knew it was a hard life without a lot of financial rewards. I was on a very small farm. We only had 1,500 acres that we operated, and that's just not enough to easily make a living, but I was determined that I was going to do it. But I think that opportunity to grow up in that environment really was a lot that helped me get where I was. I did, though, see that college was a good thing. And I decided if I went off to Northern, is where I went up in Havre, that I could learn at least another skill. And I liked working with metal and welding. So I took metals technology courses up there. And when I came back to the farm, I started this little company on the side that I called the Spika Welding and Fabrication. I had this old pickup there that I set up as a field welding rig. You can see a shop there in that left picture, a little tiny brick building with no heat and very poor lighting, but that was, that was my pride and joy there. And so I supplemented the farming with the welding to some extent. HCR years was after I got married and just was really struggling. Economics of agriculture was tough. And I was fortunate to be able to get a job in Lewistown to supplement it all at a company called HCR. And we built these products that's shown there for refrigerated freezer warehouses. A lot of stuff went into Walmart and places like that and their big distribution centers. And this actually is what I call my true education. I had learned how to work with metals in college and on my own, but this taught me what it was like to work in more of a production environment with more people. And I started basically building crates and moved pretty quickly into a welding position and eventually into all of the positions on the floor, then the shop foreman. And after 9 years, I retired out of there as a production manager. So I got to see a lot of the workings of a business like that. At that time, I think there's about 30 of us employed there. And so there was quite a bit that I learned about business. And that I see as really a valuable experience. And that was my education that kind of launched me into the ability to do my own business. Next slide. I retired out of that company in '99. I actually started another company. I didn't put a slide here, but Carol, my wife, and I started a company called the Montana Aviary Company. And we built these, what we call furniture quality aviaries. They were these relatively large enclosures for canaries and finches and different types of birds, even little button quail and doves and so on. And they're really unique, made out of hardwood, oaks and cherry wood and different kinds of really pretty wood. Had a lot of plexiglass in them instead of wire screens that kept the mess in. And we'd do rounded corners of the glass and stuff like that. Really cool. But again, that was a learning experience. It was really an interesting, fun way to express my creativity. But I was in the wrong place with that market. If I would have been in an urban area where there's a lot freer dollars and people, a bigger potential market out there would have been different. But middle of Montana, people loved them. They thought they were great, but they couldn't justify the cost of them. And to try and market outside of Montana was really tough. So, and in the midst of that, when I was working on the aviaries, we had a fire started one night and burned down my shop and the building next to it, and every bit of equipment I had and everything. So being without a shop made it a lot easier to go to a bank and said, we need to build a new shop, something that we can actually do things in. And if I have it large enough, I think I can do a lot more than what I've been doing. And so we actually built half of this. And then after a couple of years, we doubled the size of it. But this was out on my farm. We were still 25 miles outside of town. Started out with just a couple people working with me, and eventually by 2006 and 7, I think we were up to around 12 people, 14 people. the Hello Basket years, this is kind of what launched us into the direction that we ended up going. I had the opportunity to contract with a firm to build this product back behind us. This is actually one of the versions of it, and it was designed to transport beneath helicopters, primarily for the military. And to start with, they came to me with the design of just the outer part, nothing inside of it, that they could load cargo and stuff into and transport it. And eventually, the next year, they had me actually design a self-contained fire apparatus that went inside of it. So we learned how to weld plastic and build the polypropylene tanks and weld up the stainless steel plumbing and everything for it. Really, really nice outfits. And then the next year was this here. This was a chemical and biological hazard decontamination system. So it was a lot like the fire apparatus, but it was it had heated water and the ability to inject additives into the stream to neutralize different threats. So this is when I really started being able to do some design work. Now, I'd never been specifically trained as a designer, but when you learn fabrication in metals, it just kind of comes as part of it. So this was stretching my capabilities to design these things, but it was really cool. We knew that there was kind of a limited window on that opportunity. It was only going to have a few years, and then it was going to run its course. And we wanted our own product, something that was Spika branded. This was our own. And so we tried a number of different things. We built some fire trucks, wildland fire rigs that were pretty cool. Built this, what we call the weed blaster. It was designed for removing noxious weed seeds and aquatic invasive species from boats. But if you're taking equipment up into wilderness areas and so on, you have to make sure you're not taking any noxious weeds in there to get them started. So we built these that they'd wash their equipment off remotely. Really cool also. That had a little 35 horsepower diesel engine in it and a really high capacity pump. These are cool things, really enjoyed building them. But again, we were struggling to try and make money on them. They were too customized, and it just was, it was hard to be able to come out very much ahead on them. But it was part of what launched us into where we were going. Eventually, through exposure with the military, I got to see what they were using in a lot of their facilities for work platforms and what we came to call elevated access stands. And they were junk. They were poorly designed. They hadn't been improved on for years and years and years. And they were difficult to work with. They didn't give the best access to things. The wheels would break off of them and they're wobbly. And, you know, we identified that this is something that we could really improve on. We could do much better. And so we started pursuing that market. And actually in 2006, started designing systems for military, Army aviation, primarily helicopters, because they really need a lot of maintenance and it's all up high. So we designed systems for the Chinook and the Black Hawk and the Apache and bid those into a federal solicitation and was able to land a $3 million contract for that. When we got that, we were starting to grow, and we were starting to outgrow our plant again out on the farm. And it just didn't make sense to continue putting money into that to grow it. So we took a big step in 2007. And in 2008, we moved into a new facility that we built just outside of Lewistown. And it just seemed huge. It was 60 feet wide and 160 feet long, if I remember right. Maybe it's 100. I can't even remember now, but it seemed like we would never ever fill it up. It was so big, and we had lots of offices, and it was just really nice. As is pretty typical, it wasn't that long before we found we were outgrowing it because our market was growing and our ability to make sales. To start with, we'd kind of cut our teeth on military aviation. That was, they maintained their aircraft every day they were working on them, and they needed this kind of equipment. But so that was a good market for us, but we wanted to diversify out, so we weren't just totally tied to one particular customer. And so we started looking at commercial aviation, both when they're maintaining and during the manufacturing of it. Other industrial manufacturing, if they're making big, heavy earth-moving equipment or things like that. The space industry was starting to kick off even more, and so we started out with products for working around satellites when they're building them, the bigger satellites, and those were really challenging because they were in clean room environments that we had to totally reanalyze the way we were designing things to be able to meet clean room requirements. And yet we kind of made our mark there, and the industry started recognizing us for the quality and the capability that we had. And it started spreading, throughout that industry. We also started pursuing automotive a little bit, and especially our thought was on the larger trucks that are manufactured, buses, RVs, things like that. Cars, we didn't see a whole lot because most of that, they don't have to get up in the air. And if you don't need to be off the ground, then you don't have a lot of use for what we're designing and manufacturing. And we also started looking at foreign markets, because if domestically we had a lot of really strong reception and enthusiasm about what we had, we thought that there's some likelihood that some of the foreign customers might, particularly in the military, and that they were using the same type of aircraft, helicopters, fighter jets, and so on that we were here in the States. And so we started pursuing some markets into that. I'm going to give you a little dog and pony show here of some of the things that we've built. On the left there, that's actually just a mock-up capsule for astronauts, but it's exact replica in size and shape of the real thing. And this one is one of NASA's rocket programs, but you can see the yellow platform there off to the right. That's the type of thing that we built, and it's very, very unique and specific to be able to interface very cleanly with a round object, and in this case actually one that's conical shape, so as it changes its height, that the diameter has to match up with changes as well. So it's got more unique challenges to try and keep a clean and safe work environment there. It gets them where they need to be, in this case for getting into and out of the capsule. And safety is a big issue with this. A lot of times it's the safety programs that initiate the contact with us, and they say that the way our guys in the shop are doing this is dangerous, and OSHA is hounding us about fixing it, and somebody's going to get hurt, or somebody did get hurt. How can you create some equipment that will get us where we need to be safely and prevent any kind of hazardous operating conditions? The system on the right is actually one for satellites. This was actually where it was called the GOES-R Lockheed Martin satellite system. They send up a number of them, and they're the high-tech weather satellites that are furnishing the information you see when you're looking at your weather forecasts. It tells far more information than the old ones ever did, and those were built within our platform systems. Now you can see how complex these are. There's a lot of pieces to them, but on this it would go up and down. It would extend into and back away from the satellite with extension, what we call sliders, and then on some of them that actually was designed to go over the top of it, and they would work on their bellies underneath to work on things on the top, and those would slide back and forth down each platform as well. So you basically had 3 axes of movement on that. It was pretty cool systems. One on the left and right both here, this is a B-2 stealth bomber. There's only about, I think, 20 of these in existence, if I remember right. Really high dollar, $2 billion per aircraft. Really, really cool technology. And we had the good fortune of being approached by the Air Force, and they had a very unique need to be able to get to that particular part of the aircraft. And so we got to go down. I walked over the top of the thing in my little booties. You have to be very, very careful with the surface on the outside skins of these, because they're easily damaged. But measured it all up and tried to figure out how to get something designed that would fit exactly with this. And it was pretty cool. We actually made 5 of these. 2 of them were at Whiteman Air Force Base, and 2 of them down in Palmdale, where they do the full rebuilds of these aircraft where they originally made them. And then one went to Guam, where they stationed those aircraft quite a bit as well. But that was one of the neatest early systems that we did, and that would have been probably about 2009 maybe. Couple of the more recent ones here on the left is actually some platforms that are used when they're building the actual rocket body itself. This is when they're laying up the carbon fiber composite material that goes over this mold. And it's quite a process, and they lay it up on there, and they have to stitch it all together very carefully, and then it goes into an autoclave and cooks it and sets it up and ties it all together. Really cool. This is a company actually out of Switzerland that's got plants set up down in Alabama, and they're, again, to be able to work with companies like this is just really fascinating for something out of the middle of Montana. On the right, these are a couple large stands that go to Boeing for their new 777X model. That's a huge aircraft, and these go up underneath the wings, and it works with them doing all their final assembly and testing of the fuel systems on that aircraft. So these elevate up. That's at the low height there, and then they go up quite high. This is next one is Bell helicopter plant. When they developed a new helicopter called the 525, they built a whole plant down in Amarillo just to build that particular model. And they came to us to basically outfit all of the work platforms through all the stations there. And so that was a pretty big job. There's a lot of them, and this is just showing kind of one station. But it was built very specific to fit around the aircraft at the right places and in the right ways. Part of it is a section will come out of the middle when they're joining the back, the front, and the center sections all together. Then pieces of our platform come out and it goes back together, and then it fits it when it's all together. So that was a really cool project. This is one in Hawaii for what they called a C-40A. I believe it's very similar to a 737, but it's a cargo version. And these were stands that we made that would access underneath the wing, so they could get up and do service on their control surfaces there, all the stuff within the wings, the fuel tanks, and all of that. So there's a set like this on each side of the aircraft, and it's just big, covered a lot of ground. This is a Canadian aircraft on the left here that it scoops up water out of a lake, flies over a lake, and scoops it up and fills the tank in itself in a matter of seconds, and then it drops that water over fires. And very, very effective wildland fire fighting. And so these stands here allowed them to get up and work on their engines on these planes. The middle one is a really interesting thing, kind of showing the diversity of the products that we build and the industries that we serve. About the last thing I'd ever thought we would be hearing from was a company called Facebook. And what is Facebook going to need with anything that we're building? Well, Facebook has all these big server farms where the first one I went to and toured for the first one of these was 1 million square feet and just packed full of computer servers. And very narrow aisles, not much room. They haven't put any more room in there than they absolutely have to have, but there's these tall areas, and on the right, you kind of see him using it there, where they have to be able to elevate up. They need to get taller than what what a fixed stand would be. If it was as high as they need to be, then they couldn't roll around underneath all the obstacles. So this self-contained, runs off a battery, so it'll elevate up, I think about a meter, if I remember. I can't remember for sure what the elevational range was on this. And then the safety railing on it extends up, and there's a piece that tilts out that they can actually lay on their belly. So it had to be weighted quite a bit at the bottom because you couldn't really get stable feet under it. So we put weight in the base of it so you can lean out and it's still going to be stable. So, it kind of shows that it's just across the board, the different industries that we're able to serve. This is a system that is designed, we built a number of these, but it's designed for the Chinook helicopter when they do complete overhauls of them. They take everything apart and inspect it, replace what's getting worn, put it back together. This one actually was one of 4 of them that we shipped to Turkey. And so we had a crew went over there to set the whole thing up, but it's big. I mean, a Chinook helicopter is a big aircraft, and to be able to wrap around it entirely is quite a challenge, and different levels. And, it's just, they're quite the systems, but we built a number of them like this, and especially for the 3 Army aviation helicopters, we do a lot of those. Customer list to be proud of. I mean, I want you to stop and think here. I'm a farm kid, grew up in 25 miles in the country from Lewistown, Montana. This is where we raise wheat and cows and sheep and malt barley. That's who we are. And yet here's this little company started up that is working with these customers. NASA, Sierra Nevada, Blue Origin, all of these that are cutting edge in the space industry. Virtually every major player that's putting stuff into orbit and looking at going to the moon and Mars is coming to us for support equipment to help them build this stuff. Aviation, I think last year Boeing was our largest customer, if I'm not mistaken. But all the big players in building airplanes are coming to Lewistown, Montana to get these things they can't get elsewhere. Defense, of course, all of the different branches of the military here. Coast Guard has been real good for a lot of this stuff here recently, and the Marine Corps, actually, with a lot of their tactical vehicles, they've got 2 what they call reset facilities that are clear, where they bring all of their used equipment to and totally tear them down and rebuild them. And we had $2 or $3 million worth of product went into each one of those facilities. We're getting into the auto manufacturing more. Fiat Chrysler, a company called Proterra that makes electric buses. I think Missoula is one of the first in the state to actually buy Proterra electric buses for inside their city transit. Commercial truck manufacturing, I think we're working on one right now for, I think it's Volvo possibly. And so there's these, there's a lot of opportunity out there that we haven't even really begun to get into. Industrial, W.L. Gore, if you've heard of Gore-Tex, we built equipment for them to be able to access the equipment that makes that fabric. And so it's, we're not actually making Gore-Tex, but we're making the equipment that allows them to make it. Caterpillar, Komatsu, Otis Elevator, believe it or not. We were working with a Chinese plant for Otis for quite a while on those. And I think, if I remember right, they were putting up a plant back here in the United States, but they were kind of organizing it from their Chinese plant that was already doing this type of thing. So, and unique Disney World, we've built platforms that allow them to access and work on the monorails down there. Excuse me, Facebook, like I had mentioned. Fairmont Homes is a company that manufactures fabricated housing. kind of the high-end stuff. And Fairmont is just one of a dozen companies that this parent company has that builds these homes that you see out there. And I'm working a project right now with the parent company in a new plant that we're going to have to be able to span 80 feet width on our platform, clear span, that will actually elevate up. And when the 80-foot long home is on the assembly line, it will pass lengthways underneath our platforms. So again, that we're all across the board, from fairly small, simple stands to very large ones like that. Foreign customers, we've got, quite a lot has gone into Israel, into Japan, Australia, some into Sweden, Jordan, Turkey, Italy, a lot of the Middle Eastern countries. So, again, we've broadened out outside of just the United States, and we've done it because of the innovation that we brought into this industry, how we've really brought a lot of changes and improvements into elevated access platforms, and we really do it better than anybody. How are we looking for time, Matt? I don't have a clock on me here. I shut my phone off so that I wasn't.
We're doing good, Tom.
Are we? The community impact, and I put this in here because, again, I've done a lot of bragging about what our company does and makes, but ultimately, I'm not trying to sell you Spika Design and Manufacturing. I'm trying to illustrate really what it's done in my life. And when I first started the company, and when we got the contract for building the Hello Baskets, the vision that I had was I would be able to possibly create 6 or 8 jobs that, people, I was seeing a lot of agricultural families, the young generation growing up, and there just wasn't a place for them. Either their parents weren't ready to retire off the farm, or the farm was just too small and being absorbed by neighboring. And these people grew up here. This is where their families were and their friends were, but they had to be able to make a living here somehow, and there just wasn't a lot of opportunity for them to do that, and especially to have jobs that were good enough that they could raise a family on, that they could have insurance with. Insurance is such a big thing. And that, it could be a place that they enjoyed working and would take pride in what they were doing, and that, it would allow them to stay in the community. And so that was always really a big part of my driving motivation, was to be able to do that. Well, where I had thought 6 or 8 people, would be a great thing, we're up to close to 60 now, and have been for quite a while, but we're continuing to grow. And I have no doubt we'll be at 100 before that many more years. And, I don't know how much farther we'll go, but it seems like right now the future looks really promising, because there's just so many industries need what we have, and we've made such a name and reputation, and have really a high quality design engineering team now that's doing incredible things. It allows us, being a part of this community and being a relatively profitable operation, to support our community. And the community is ours. It's mine. It's where I live, but it's where my people that work with me live. This is our community. And so to be able to support community improvement things, and whether it's a new ER at the hospital, or a swimming pool, or an announcer stand at the rodeo grounds, or things like that, we can lend our support there. Sometimes it's just financial, sometimes it's actually building things for the community. A little sidewalk patio thing we did for Lewistown here that's kind of cool. So I had a picture of that. But it allows us to be very proactive in helping to make our community even better than what it is. Just the amount of money that in wages and a certain amount of local spending that we do goes back into our economy. We're a town of about 6,000, 6,500 people, something like that. And to have, $2 million worth of cash pumped into this economy through the people that are working here, it's a factor. It really is. And it helps Lewistown to stay on the map. We're one of 4 or 5 or 6 pretty cool manufacturing businesses here that altogether, there's quite a few families are able to live in Lewistown or in central Montana because these companies exist. And our first and foremost, we want to employ local people. We want to give them job opportunities. But when we can't find the specialized positions like engineers and drafters and solid modelers, we do everything in 3D solid modeling when we design it, and it goes out into the floor in 2D that our drafters convert it back into piece by piece. But when I can't find ones like that locally that just don't exist here, then we look outside of the area into ideally Montana. But sometimes we have to look outside of Montana. And a lot of times the ones we find outside of Montana started in Montana. They were born, raised here, moved out of the state to find jobs. And so we can bring them back and bring them into Lewistown, and that puts more kids in our school and more business for local ones. The personal impact, this is, as opposed to community, what did I get out of it? And, it's just been an incredibly rewarding experience for me, because I was born with this entrepreneur mentality. I wanted to grow something of my own. I had a very good job at HCR, but that wasn't my company. It was, I was doing work that I enjoyed doing, but I thought, if I can do this for this company, I should be able to grow my own company that I can put my expertise and skills and talents to. And so to be able to envision something that doesn't exist and put together a plan to make it exist and do everything that you can possibly do to ensure it's going to succeed is really rewarding and satisfying. And I feel like I'm making an impact in so many different ways. First off, with our customers. I mean, we're giving them a product that they can't find elsewhere, that is so efficient to work with and gives them so unequaled safety in making sure they don't fall off of these high places. And, I feel very, very proud of the fact that we have, the Royal Jordanian Air Force from Jordan in Europe calls Spika Manufacturing in Lewistown, Montana, because we have the exact product that they desire. That's really, it's a feeling that you can't get many other ways. For our people here, we try to pay well. None of our folks are independently wealthy, but they're able to at least raise a family and be making payments on vehicles and on a home, and on when a refrigerator goes out, they can buy it. That's really hard to do with a lot of the typical jobs you find in small towns. They just, the retailers pay the best they can, but there just isn't that kind of money in it, margins, to where they can pay as well as what a manufacturing firm like ours. So I really feel like I'm making an impact to those 60 families out there. Again, the support for our community, it makes me feel good to be able to contribute. And it's even like one day a year, we'll take a community benefit day where every employee, myself included, every employee leaves the shop on a work day, and we go throughout the community working with different organizations, whether it's the senior citizens or the Head Start or Pregnancy Help Center, or we're just cleaning up Main Street in certain areas. Or last year we also went out to a school outside of town, an old historic school that's no longer used, and we painted it for them and trying to help preserve it. And to be able to have a company that can do that and actually give back to the community one day a year doesn't seem like a lot, but it's, you pay the wages for 60 people for a day and get no production out of it. It's significant, but that's our investment in our community to do things like that. And I also feel like what I'm doing right now can make an impact in talking with people about our story, my story, the fact that there's nothing particularly, unique about me or genius or anything. I'm just kind of an ordinary sheep farmer, but I had a vision and I did have the ability to try and put a plan together, and I could work with metal, and I could figure out how to run a business slowly, and I'm still learning all of that. But there is no reason why this can't happen over and over and over in our rural communities, and in the bigger cities as well. You see, Billings and Bozeman, Missoula, Kalispell, there's some really cool manufacturing being done there. Some really neat stuff comes out of Montana. And I am so supportive of that. And some of them are just incredibly large companies, have done so much. But out here in the rural areas, we really need that economic boost as well. And so many of us that are in these small areas and Class C schools and slightly larger, we're, to be able to start something in a community like ours and actually have it impact the community, there's no reason why it can't be done over and over again. And we're not making any more acres of land. We're, our opportunities in agricultural employment are just going to be decreasing as automation gets more and more prevalent. So if we're going to find ways to keep people here and give them good opportunities to raise a family and to grow and prosper here, we have to do it through things like manufacturing. And, I really, really hope that I can help people like you at least think about what would it be like. Is this something that I would have the ability to do? Would it be something that would float my boat? Would I get a lot of enjoyment out of it? Or is it something that, I have absolutely no interest in? And it's not everybody is cut out for entrepreneurship, quite honestly. But if you're really creative and you're competitive, and if you can come up with a new, unique idea, I'm not one as much to say, yeah, we can do that too. I want to be the one leading the charge. I want to have the differentiators out there that set us apart from everybody else. And if you have an idea like that can actually make your mark on the world because you're bringing something new out there that the public wants, man, that's a key part. And it took us a while to find that for us. Like I showed with the fire trucks and wash systems and stuff, where we really had the ability to excel and where the market needed us was where we ended up. And that's so key to success. Do you like to set a goal and do whatever it takes to make it happen? And that's bolded for a reason, because, if you have a 9-to-5 job, you check into it and out of it and you do your best while you're there, but then that's kind of what you do. When you start your own company, you live it. It becomes almost another member of your family that you have to be totally devoting time and attention and talent to. And if you don't have the ability to commit that much of your life to something, it's going to be hard to be successful as an entrepreneur. You just have to be so committed. And that's, committing everybody your time and energy. It's all consuming, but it's so worth it if you're into that. Can you get others to buy into your ideas? That's a lot of times the first step is, if you have an idea, to run it past people and see see if they agree it's a good idea. But what this is also talking to is your salesmanship ability. Can you sell a lender on the idea that I can make this happen? Can you sell the idea to your clients, to your customers out there, that this is truly what you need and it's well worth the money you're going to pay me for it? You have to have that skill, and you can develop it, but it needs to be there. if you're going to launch a business of your own, because you're going to be tasked to convince a lot of people that what you're trying to do is a good idea. And last one is, are you willing to risk everything you have? I mean, when we went into this, we still own the farm, but I put the farm for collateral. That was what was allowing me to launch into this, was the fact that I owned the farm by that point in time. And I pushed all my chips in the middle of the table, and I says, I'm all in. You know, I'm going to play this hand and I'm going to win with it, but I'm all in. And if I don't win, then I'm back to square one. And that's one of the hardest things that weeds out more entrepreneurs than anything, is that they are not willing to be risk takers. Now, I don't mean that you just are careless. You have to have calculated risk. You have to know what you're getting into. But there's never guarantees in this, that you're always risking that this may not work like you think it's going to. So that's really a critical point. Pathway to success. If you see entrepreneurship and starting your own business is going to be a way you can make a lot of money, a lot more than you're making hourly wages, and you're going to live the good life, that's not a good reason to do it, because you're going to live your first years pretty meager. Every bit of money that you make is going to be pumped back into that business to make it grow and sustain. And so you better be willing to live on some pretty short earnings for the first few years. You know, it's seldom that you're into something that is such a home run from the word go that all you do is start taking, you know, wheelbarrows full of money to the bank. So you have to be willing to do it for the satisfaction of actually growing something, seeing it succeed, bringing something into existence, and doing it one step at a time. Eventually, if things work right, you will see the financial reward, but that can't be the reason that you're getting into it. And then learn all that you can. What I found is that I needed to know quite a bit about everything. I need to know a little bit about everything, enough to know what I didn't know and where to go looking to learn it. But, you know, all these things, accounting, marketing, just your general business management, your human resources, something I knew nothing about, hiring people and how you handle all of the regulatory stuff there and how you manage them effectively, and loans and financing. How do you go to a bank and create a plan, a business plan that you can take to them and again convince them that you've got a great idea here and they need to be willing to believe in you and loan you the money to help you do it, or to outside investors. So a lot of times it's not banks that you're getting the funding from, but family and friends, and sometimes independent investors. You need to understand your market research. How do you do that? How do you know what you're up against out there as far as a competitive field? And so all these things, I mean, learn all you can while you can. Learn during high school, learn during college if you go there, but continue to learn as you get out into the field. It's you can never quit learning, but most of all, know everything there is to know about your specialty. You know, if you're coming out with a new pizza business that is, you really think that you've got a cool pizza, you know how to make them in a way that's better than anybody else's, they're going to love this stuff, then know everything about pizza, know everything about the equipment to prepare it, know about how you best serve your customers, how do you attract them through advertising and promotions and so on. You got to know everything there is to know about it. And your key to success is being able to do what you're doing better than anybody else in the world. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but one of them that I really recommend you trying is called How I Built This. And they take an hour to review or interview these founders of all these big companies that ended up being huge, you know, multi-million or billion-dollar companies that started out many times in somebody's garage or basement. And every one of them almost follows the same storyline. They're so predictable that you have this great idea that you think will work and nobody believes it, but you finally get enough money to try it, and it starts working and it starts growing, and you overcome all these struggles, and it's looking so good. And then there's always something comes out of left field that knocks your wheels out from under you, that it just is just devastating. And for most people, that would be the end of the story. But for these, they overcome that adversity. They find a way to get through, even against the advice of other people and against the fact they can't get financing to come back, and they do it anyhow. And eventually, you know, they become Dell Computers or Ben and Jerry's or Sierra Nevada. So listen to those podcasts. They're really interesting and inspiring, and they tell you an awful lot. Last slide here. This is just some of my toys. This is, they're none of them high dollar things, but because I am where I am now at 58 years old, I've got enough money coming in from my business that I can have a few toys like this now. And this is my sanity here. I get away and play with these and get away from work some. But, you know, this I threw in just because they're fun. The 46 Studebaker, we made it into a convertible left up there, a 383 stroker. And, you know, it's just, these are my fun things. So anyhow, I really appreciate you listening to me. I hope I didn't bore you too much with it, but to me, you can tell I'm passionate about it. I very much enjoy what I'm doing still after 20 years. I'm still very enthusiastic every day that the things that we're working with. So now it's time for you to throw some questions at me.
Thanks, Tom. That was great. I've got a lot of questions that have come in privately here to me. One of them, what's the largest platform that you build?
It's a good question. We've got some big ones that are probably, I don't know, if you put it all together, they're going to be 70, 80 feet long. Some of them you link together, they might be 30 feet wide. We've done some that will go up as high as, I think 17, 18, 19 feet in the air. And, you know, a lot of them start very low. That was another innovation we brought to it. You couldn't find anything but a scissor lift to do that when we first started. Now our platforms that are far superior to scissors in a lot of ways, we can start very low and go up very high. So, you know, it's, we do really across the board.
Great, thank you. Could you give us you mentioned some dollar figures on some of your contracts. One of the questions is, what's the biggest deal you've ever closed, and were you able to make a decent profit off of it?
We just got a purchase order a couple weeks ago, or last week maybe, for something over $1.1 million for one contract. And I would hope that we do make money on that. You know, we're shooting, I think, for about a 12% return, somewhere in there. We don't always hit it. Sometimes we exceed it, but, you know, and that sounds, when you put that dollars together, that, geez, you guys are hauling off tons of money to the bank. Well, it all goes back into growing the company and you know, the expansion we're doing right now, $500,000 to put a little expansion on. So the profit goes back out and expenses really quickly, but our products will run anywhere from like a, you know, $3,000 little tiny stand up to a $250,000 system for like those Chinook helicopter face systems. And on some of our really unique one-off ones, they can exceed that pretty easy. So, you know, we have some fairly large contracts. You also have to realize, when we have those, we don't get paid for that until the very end of the process. So we have to buy all the material up front. We have to pay the cost of all the wages of putting it together, all the overhead before, which is a big factor, all of your power and insurance and all of that kind of stuff, all ahead of time, and then ship it. And then once they get it, the clock starts ticking, and some of them are wanting 45 and 60 and 90 days before they have to pay. So if you've got, $250,000 sale out there, you have your own money out in the line for that period of time, which is months. So it takes an awful lot of capital just to keep a company like this going.
Great, thank you. You mentioned that you started initially hoping to create 6 to 8 jobs for the community. You're at 60 employees today. You said you don't think it'll be too long before you're at 100 people. If you could recommend to the students on this call, from growing from 60 to 100 people, what are the skill sets you're going to be looking for in those additional 40 people?
For me, the blue collar skills are so huge, and that's being able to be a welder, a machinist, even woodworking, because we palletize everything with wood, and we have to make some really nice ways to get our product there and keep it all in one piece. And of course, assembly. There's a lot of assembly done on these. We make the pieces, and then somebody has to be able to put them together, and do it by reading the blueprints and knowing the most efficient ways of doing it. So those are really the people that we're going to need. But then we also need ones like my designers, engineers, drafters, ones that know how to do solid modeling. We need ones that are working with our marketing so we can reach more people and get them aware of what we have to offer. So marketing is huge. Sales, obviously, that know our product and know how to be very open and effective with the customers, and inviting and easy to talk to, and able to capture what they're needing. Even in the bookwork side, and HR for sure, knowing how to keep training programs going and make sure everybody is being treated well, and that any issues they have, they're being dealt with. So there's just a lot of different skills that are needed, but some of the hardest to get are the ones in the trades. And our philosophy has been for so many years, you have to go to a 4-year college and get a degree to be successful, and that's not at all the case. I mean, on some of these CTEs, like I've toured the one down at Billings. I don't know if we have anybody on from that there at the CTE there. Incredible. There's students coming out of there that I would hire directly right out of high school. Because of the skills that they're learning. What we want is the foundation. We'll teach you the rest once you get here, but you need that foundation. But good, sound high school programs and 2-year colleges where you can go like I did. I went to Havre, but you can go to Helena or to Flathead Valley and learn machining up there. You can go to Great Falls. All these different 2-year colleges are so good because they can develop those skills that make you very attractive to companies like ours. And you'll have a lot of employers that are all trying to get you to come on board with them. So those are excellent skills to build.
Great answer. I'm going to end on a fun note here, Tom. We're just at an hour. Thank you. It was so great to hear your story, and I think so valuable to understand how to build a company and all that goes into it. Last question for you. Your pig is named Otis. Otis Elevators is one of your clients. Is there a connection there?
No, there isn't. I had Otis, I think, before he worked with those elevators. Maybe not. I don't know. When I got him, it was. I wasn't too sure. Originally he was Willie for the first day or two. You have to get to know an animal and their personality before you know what their name is. And he just cried out Otis after I had him for a while. And so he seems happy with the name. He's never complained. So, but yeah, he's a fun little guy.
We got one last late question that just came in. You mentioned, if you could hire a kid out of those CTEs, what would you say a starting salary would be if you want to pick one job that you have in demand and what you guys offer starting?
I think I'm kind of far removed from our HR side, but I think we start them around $15. And then after you're here for, I think, 6 months, then you get in on our profit sharing and the full insurance. We pay 100% for you and 50% for your families, if I'm not mistaken. There's 401 that we'll contribute to as well. And so after 6 months, that comes in there. But, you can work up over $20 an hour you know, with time and with building the skills and value. And I'd like to see that, you know, pushing $25 for your average worker, and we will get there, but it's just, you know, when you're in a growing company, you just have to hold enough back to manage that growth. And, you know, it's a challenge, but still it's a far better offering than what they're going to find in a lot of other jobs in communities like this.
Can we give Ashley a moment? She looks like she'd like to, you want to recruit any of these high school students on the call, Ashley?
I just was going to give the Tom thumbs up. Yep, we start, our lowest starting position is 15, 16 an hour. So that'd be somebody that we're training from scratch. The vast majority of our employees make between $40,000 and $60,000 a year. So it's well over the median for the area and the state. And it's right in line with our region. We feel pretty proud about being in line, but also Tom's vision for this is that we're at the top end of that and that we push that forward. So not that we are right in line with everybody, but that we're setting the new mark for everybody. So that's what we're working toward.
That's great. Thanks, Ashley.
Oh, and Matt, the one last thing that I think I didn't point out, and I should, if you're into the entrepreneurship, what's going to be so key to your success is getting the right team together to make it happen. And I've been so fortunate in having the right people. Right now, like with Ashley, she's our controller there, and she's just one in a million. My sales staff, Becky and Chad and Jeff, are so excellent at what they're doing, and our shop production and all of that. If you have weaknesses there, that's really a challenge. So, man, you just cannot understate the value of having a really strong team that's all pulling in the same direction and has such a broad variety of skills to make it all happen.
I think that's a great note to end on. Tom, thank you very much again for giving us your time. This has been fantastic.
You bet. Thank you, and good luck to all of you listeners out there. If you ever in Lewistown want to stop and see us, please do. We'll show you